Long ago, in the ancient land of Israel, there lived a committed cadre of sectarians, subdivided among various mystical groups, who recorded visions and attributed them to an assortment of biblical characters, Abraham, Enoch, and Moses among them. They claimed to have descended from the priestly line of Moses via the high priest Abiathar back in the days of King David. But David's successor, King Solomon, chose the rival high priest, Zadok, from the line of Moses' brother Aaron to wield authority over cult and ritual, as the Jerusalem temple was consecrated. Abiathar was exiled to a town called Anathoth, and his descendants found themselves marginalized for centuries to come. That included the great prophet from Anathoth, known as Jeremiah. Centuries passed, and when the Israelites were conquered and themselves exiled to Babylonia, the priestly line of Aaron, the Zadokites, continued to dominate Jewish society, and upon their return from exile, under the Persian Emperor Cyrus, they rebuilt the temple, which was again their domain. The Abiathar line from Moses, whom we can call Mushites, found themselves disenfranchised. Following the revolt of the Maccabees, culminating in the Feast of Hanukkah, they remained in tension with the new Jewish monarchy, the Hasmoneans, the Zadokite priesthood, and the temple. In the tradition of the early prophets, they were anti-establishment and anti-urban, meeting in secret groups or conventicles, where they cultivated an alternate spirituality centered on visions and revelations. That's the backdrop against which an amazing piece of literature, theorized to have been the work of an anonymous visionary author, evolved. We don't know who he was, and his identity remains a mystery. But he was most likely one of the marginalized, disenfranchised Jewish priests from the land of Israel, perhaps one of the pious Hasidim who fought alongside the Maccabees at the beginning of their revolt, only to drop out after the temple had been retaken. Or perhaps he was a member of the Essene sect, who most believe were connected with the Dead Sea Scrolls. But we've come to know how incredible the work he produced was, today called the Book of Jubilees. Like a similar ancient work, composed by the same circles, the Book of Enoch, it gained wide acceptance among the whole of ancient Judean society, and common folk in those days certainly considered it divinely inspired, holy writ. But it never made its way into the Hebrew Bible, and was so suppressed by religious authorities that by the 5th century of the Common Era, not a single version survived in Hebrew, Greek, or Latin. Only in the 20th century did various Hebrew fragments of Jubilees surface among the Dead Sea Scrolls, confirming the original Semitic nature of the text. Why was Jubilees banned? Perhaps because, like Enoch, it is laden with what we might call paranormal phenomena or encounters.
After all, Jubilees is also known as the Apocalypse of Moses and the Little Genesis, and it opens with an extraordinary claim of authorship. It's attributed to the very hand of Moses, dictated by an angel and painstakingly inscribed during the 40-day period when the great lawgiver was up on Mount Sinai. The story is written from the viewpoint of the angel after the exodus of the Israelites out of Egypt. We are led through the creation of man, Adam's fall, the union of fallen angels with earthly women, the birth of demonic offspring, the cleansing of the earth by the great flood, and the astounding claim that human nature was somehow changed, bringing about less sinful qualities than what antediluvian humanity possessed. The narration fills in many details in Israel's history, ending at the point when the narration itself takes place, after the Exodus. Along the way, we are introduced to various classes of angels, including angels of the presence, angels of sanctification, guardian angels, and angels who preside over the forces of nature.
And the angel of the presence spoke to Moses according to the word of the Lord, saying, Write the complete history of the creation, how in 6 days the Lord God finished all his works and all that he created.
The so-called complete history that resulted relates the events described in the Book of Genesis through the 12th chapter of Exodus, being dated by jubilees of 49 years, each of which is composed of 7 cycles of 7 years. The resulting Jubilee calendar would ensure that the observance of the biblical feasts and holy days took place on the proper dates, and it would set Israelites apart from their non-Jewish neighbors. Above all, it emphasized Israel as the divine covenant community. Jubilees likely reached its final form around 100 years before the Common Era, but the book's ancient traditions, mythological or not, clearly date much earlier. In any case, it was preserved in its entirety only in an Ethiopic translation, dating from the 15th and 16th centuries. That version was derived from a Greek translation that in turn came from a hypothetical Hebrew original. And how amazing it was that fragments of the Hebrew original popped up among the Dead Sea Scrolls in the middle of the 20th century. Its isolationist religious spirit and its strictness must have led the Essene sect to quote extensively from Jubilees in the scroll they called the Damascus Rule, or Damascus document. And Jubilees is also linked with another scroll, the Genesis Apocryphon, which parallels Genesis and was favored by the sectarian community. Among the Dead Sea Scroll fragments, we have an account of a host of angels present at the beginning of creation.
On the first day he created the upper supreme heavens and the earth, and the waters and all the spirits that serve before the angels of the presence, and the angels of sanctification, and the angels of the spirits of fire, and the angels of the spirits of the winds, and the angels of the spirits of the clouds, and the darkness, and the hailstones, and frost, and the dew, and the snow, and the hail and the ice, and the angels of the sounds, and the angels of the winds of the storms, and the angels of the cold winds, and the heat and the winter and the summer, and all the spirits of his creatures that made the heavens and the earth, and all the deeps, from darkness and dawn, and light and evening. And he established all according to his knowledge.
That's a whole lot of angels. But maybe the visionary author, whoever he was, is just acknowledging the innate powers of the universe, which he attributes to a divine source. There's some kind of cosmic consciousness in all of this, as the angels relate everything in a first-person narrative.
And after this, we saw his works, and praised him, and glorified him on account of all his works, for the 7 great works he created on the first day.
These 7 works consist of the heavens, the earth, water, the spirits, the abyss, darkness, and light. There's great attention to numerology throughout the narrative. Everything is mathematically predestined, as if part of some ancient cosmology that we don't understand. The Book of Jubilees goes on to describe not just what occurred during the first 7 days of creation, but what happened during the 2nd week, the 3rd week, and so on. As if describing some sort of ancient astrophysics, the angelic entities described by the unknown visionary author depict time itself as part of a predetermined process.
And on the 6 days of the second week we brought unto Adam, according to the word of God, all the beasts, and all the cattle, and all the birds, and everything that moves.
So these angelic beings claim to have acted as intermediaries between God and the material world. They were the ones who brought the animals to Adam. To hear them tell it, they were intimately involved with the oversight, or evolution if you like, of the entire animal kingdom. Clearly, the visionaries believed them and their narrative, but can we? And that begs another question. Why did our mysterious, anonymous author write this book? Jubilees isn't about belief in God or theology, or how to conduct the sacrifice, or what it meant. It's about, of all things, the calendar, which goes to the larger issue of sacred time. That's apparent from the very outset as the book retells the biblical narrative.
This is the history of the division of the days of the law and the testimony of the events of the years, of their weeks, of their jubilees throughout all the years of the world, as the Lord spoke to Moses on Mount Sinai when he went up to receive the tables of the law and the commandment, according to the voice of God as he said to him, "Go up to the top of the mount." And it came to pass in the first year of the exodus of the children of Israel out of Egypt, in the 3rd month, on the 16th day of the month.
We learn from this account that everything that happens in the world runs on a very strict calendar that was preordained and engraved on tablets in heaven. God has scheduled the time from the creation to the renewal of creation, and it is important for the children of Israel not only to be aware of it, but also to follow it. The Israelites are only to recognize a 364-day solar year.
Now, you shall command the Israelites to keep the years in this number, 364 days. Then the year will be complete, and it will not disturb its time from its days or from its festivals, because everything will happen in harmony with their testimony. They will neither omit a day nor disturb a festival.
Judaism, down to the present day, recognizes a lunisolar calendar based on the cycles of the moon, with the introduction of leap months to keep it coordinated with the seasons. That, of course, means that religious festivals do not fall on the same day every year, and sometimes fall on the Sabbath. A purely solar calendar, by contrast, standardizes the festival days. Unlike Genesis 1:14, which indicates that both the sun and the moon, and possibly the stars, were for signs and for seasons and for days and years, Jubilees recounts this.
And God appointed the sun to be a great sign on the earth for days and for Sabbaths and for months and for feasts and for years and for Sabbaths of years and for jubilees and for all seasons of the years.
While it's customary to assume that since Judaism today functions according to a calendar based on the moon, it must always have been so. But current scholarship theorizes that ancient Israel in fact used a 364-day solar calendar of 52 weeks, which prevailed in the Jerusalem temple until the 2nd century BCE, when the Syrian overlords of the region, under the Seleucid king Antiochus IV, forced a change to a lunar reckoning. Even though the Maccabee rebels staged a successful revolt, the resulting Hasmonean high priesthood kept the lunar calendar. And who allied themselves with the Hasmoneans? The Zadokite priesthood, who morphed into the Sadducee party, with whom the visionaries of the Abiathar line were in conflict. For the latter group, the restoration of the calendar was paramount, regulating every feast day and ultimately the holiness of time itself. The days of the solar calendar were calculated only from the creation of the sun, that is, from the 4th day of creation. Each year began on the Wednesday of the full moon and equinox. and the days were reckoned not from the evening, as in Rabbinic Judaism, but from the morning. All biblical events could be reckoned by this calendar, being arranged in a chronological system of Jubilee periods of 49 years each. Each event is recorded as having taken place in such a week of such a month of such a Jubilee year.
Ultimately, that means that everything is predestined. And predestination is an idea that's prominent across the Dead Sea Scrolls and came to be a prominent doctrine in a new faith called Christianity. As far as the author of Jubilees was concerned, the Hasmoneans and Zadokites in Jerusalem were not only mistaken, they were corrupt.
There will be people who carefully observe the moon with lunar observations, because it is corrupt with respect to the seasons, and is early from year to year by 10 days. Therefore, years will come about for them when they will disturb the year, and make a day of testimony something worthless, and a profane day a festival. Everyone will join together both holy days with the profane, and the profane day with the holy day, for they will be in error regarding the months, the Sabbaths, the festivals, and the Jubilee.
So important did the calendrical issue become that it may have been the single most important reason that one group of Zadokites apparently defected from the rest, retreating to the shores of the Dead Sea, ultimately coming to be known as the Essene sect. Their leader, known as the Teacher of Righteousness, was murdered, so we are told in the Dead Sea Scrolls, on the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur, by someone called the Wicked Priest. But how could any priest have engaged in combat on the Day of Atonement? Jubilees, attested to in multiple fragments among the Dead Sea Scrolls, gives us the answer. The wicked priest was following the lunar solar calendar, based on the moon, whereas the Teacher of Righteousness followed the exclusively solar calendar. For the wicked priest, it was not Yom Kippur at all, but the righteous teacher, refusing to engage in combat on this holiest of days, was struck down. In the late 1st century of the Common Era, during a great revolt against the Roman Empire, the Essene sect vanished, along with the many sectarian books they so carefully preserved. That included the Book of Enoch and the book called Jubilees. Only in recent times is such literature being studied as a testament to the tumultuous but perhaps the most seminal times in the long history of the Jewish people. Of those days, we have only scratched the surface.